Oh, namaste and welcome back, especially if you are I'm assuming that you're a longtime viewer, listener of the show. And if you're not already a subscriber, if this is your first time here, I really want to welcome you to Live, Love, Engage. I am Gloria Grace, the light messenger and spiritual business coach. And women entrepreneurs hire me to help them leverage their intuition to break through revenue ceilings and create sustainable business growth. And I'm so excited about today's podcast because I've got a awesome lady on the show who I had the pleasure of actually being on her podcast not too long ago. So let me tell you a little bit about her and why I'm so excited to introduce you to Jeannie Lynch. She is an intuitive energy healer, a spirit coach and teacher, as well as a content creator on YouTube. Jeannie's spiritual coaching business focuses on helping others navigate through difficult times by giving her clients the tools and resources to assist them along their healing journey. And she works with clients to identify and remove negative energy blocks, limiting beliefs, unhealthy thoughts or patterns that are preventing them from living the life their soul intended. And I know she's going to tell us even more about her background in a moment, but I want to bring her on now and welcome you, Jeannie Lynch, officially to Live, Love, Engage.
Happy to be back in your energy. So very happy to be here.
Oh, and I can say the same thing, me to you, because I had a wonderful experience chatting with you a while back, and now I'm pleased to turn the tables so that we can share you with my audience today. And I would love for you to start off telling us a little bit about what got you into this spiritual coaching business space, because I know that you got you were doing something different, I think, a little while ago. So you could share that with us.
Definitely. I think I have a very similar background to many people out there in the sense that how we get into these modalities of helping other people is that we go through something, right? So I'm sure many of the guests you've had have started this conversation the same way. But just a little backdrop to kind of why I think we connected so much too. 25 years in banking, left-brained, helping people navigate finances, helping them start businesses. People would come to me with the idea all messed up in their head and didn't know how to put it out on paper. And I would step in and become like a coach and a mentor and give them those first steps. At the same time, mentoring and managing people. So I'm an Aries. I don't know if that means anything to your audience. It certainly means everything to me. I'm not a follower. I'm a leader. I'm a good leader, I'd like to think. How I'm led is really important to me. I've always been really connected to people who could motivate and inspire and just help me navigate those really tough things that happen in our life. And I love helping people through challenges. So, and I love the rough edges and the people who are starting. And I love giving people chances because most of my mentors came to me in the same way. Didn't have a lot of formal education and a lot of opportunities in my past. So I am your perfect example of having to work your way up and start in at ground zero to become anything. And I believe that everybody can do that. And I think what really helps is to find the right mentor and person to love and support you through that process. So if that kind of starts this conversation, that's how it all started with me.
I love that. And yeah, you're right. Having a mentor, someone to guide you along the way is so important. I know I've had several that have helped me on my spiritual journey. And I'm going to ask you this because we're going to get into some more stuff in a second, but what would you say? What did you what was like your biggest takeaway maybe from one or of your mentors?
I think very early on that I was moldable and malleable. And just the idea of the great mentors for me are somebody who asks a lot of great questions like, well, what do you want to do? Or how does that work for you? Or what are you passionate about? And when you're starting out in the very beginning and you're not sure, I'm kind of having a flashback to one of the first men that came into my life. And he came in relatively later on in life, but I didn't watercolor at that time. I wasn't a biker. I wasn't all these things. And he just kind of kept asking great questions and was like, well, I can help you do that. And next thing you know, I had a bike and then I had a watercolor set and and these are still things that are in my experience today that I love to do. So that whole shapeable, moldable, malleable aspect of when people are in that place, that growing space and giving people around you that those opportunities to say, have you tried this? You can do this. And then you find your way. So having those people in my life, and then again, I want to be that same person to people that I love and support. So that's really the connection.
That's cool. Now, when you work with clients, what do they typically come to you for? What are they seeking? What kind of help are they really looking
Yeah.
for?
I tend to attract two different aspects, but they're always the same mindset. And they're people who want to understand spirituality broader. So they're people who are in the spiritual world who want to understand not maybe one organized religion aspect of it, but is open to all, all the ways that I guess we can walk the path and as many different paths are as there is. So those tend to be the people that find me. And then the other people that find me, and most of them are through referrals, have been through something and they just need someone to maybe sit with and hold their hand through it. They're getting ready to go through a divorce or they've just lost a child. That was kind of how my whole coaching practice on a spiritual level started. I had lost my own daughter and back in 2005. And then people started saying, oh my gosh, you should talk to Jeannie. You just lost a child too. She went through this 2 years ago and she's got some great things that maybe could help you and she's doing this and this work for her. Would you like to connect with her? There was one woman in my past, by the time I actually sat with her, she said that 13 people had referred her to talk to me. So because there was just such a need in the community for people to support people just through grief. So sitting
Mm,
with people in the very beginning of grief and helping them navigate through that, which is the most sacred process. And I know you can totally relate to that. Somebody who can trust you with their grief to me is like the most honorable energy out there because I know what it was like to sit with the people I needed to sit with in the very beginning of my grief. So that started my kind of coaching practice, but I was already always mentoring people in my business.
mm,
When I went through this beautiful awakening with the loss of my daughter in 2005, all of a sudden I just needed more, right? So I got out of the banking, I moved to Florida, I found my yoga mat, I got quiet, I really finished my healing. And then my beautiful man at one point came home and found me on my yoga mat, maybe too many hours in, and said, it's okay that you're sitting here. It's okay. But I think you need to get back to doing what you've always done really well, and that is being of service to others. Find something to do in the community. So, my first step in here in Venice was to reach out to the Women's Resource Center. The funny thing is, Gloria, I actually thought I was calling the Women's Business Center when I made the call, and it was the resource center. And of course, they needed someone right away for grief. And so it just continued on. I mean, divine, right? My beautiful practice started down here, also working with people in grief. So,
mm. Well, that is such a needed thing, and my heart goes out to you for losing a child because that was what my mom went through, and I watched her. My brother died at the age of 33, suddenly, unexpected, and it devastated her. And so I know she did seek out a counselor to work with, and I know that's it's almost like the worst thing that you can have because parents are supposed to outlive their kids. That's just the way it's supposed to
absolutely.
be, right? So I'm sorry you had to go through that, and at the same time, um, a lot of people have benefited
Yeah,
from
yeah,
your being able to work through that, and so
yeah,
that's really good that that's been able you've been able to help people in that way.
yeah,
We when in getting ready to talk today for our interview, we were talking about what kind of things to focus on and what topics would really be useful for
yeah,
uh, my audience. And I know one of the things that you talk about is something about being able to find your emotional set point.
mhm,
And can you talk a little bit about
yeah,
what that is and then why do you want to find it?
yeah.
What's the benefit of it?
I'm gonna go to a step before that for me and the way it kind of came to me. 2 weeks before my daughter passed, through as part of my leadership class through my financial career, I had to take a happy class. And I know that just sounds so funny. Happy class for managers, right? But it was how do you engage your team and how do you mentor and manage people and make sure that they're the happiest they can be. And we all know this if we're working in the business world, right? The number one reason people leave work is their boss, right? So it was about starting with us and really saying, how do you find and navigate and create a happy environment for people to work? Well, in this class, I learned something that really just changed my life, and I would love to share it with your audience. And it's a mind blowing statistic about choosing to be happy. So here we go that they went out and they did this beautiful study and they said, "What makes you happy?" And all these people answered this question. Where do you live? What do you do? What do you make? Who makes you happy? What is happiness? And all these people answer this question and they called them the happy people. Then they went over to people that really had designed or designated themselves as not being happy. And they asked them a whole series of questions also. And they asked them the same questions. And of course, everybody answered that question. Well, what they found out in these two sets, right, the control group and the happy people, was that the happy people had been through more adversity, more hardship, more heartache, more loss, more tragedy than the miserable people. And so they thought, "Oh my gosh, we got to go deeper on this study and find out why." And this is this whole long drawn out process, but the end of the story is this, that the people who were happy woke up with one phenomenal intention, and it was to be happy. They literally got up every day, got in the shower and said, "This is for me. I want it." And they wanted it. Got a goosebump saying that out loud. So it just so honors what the show is all about, right? So the ability to choose happiness and know that it's something that maybe you can learn or even have a skill to obtain. So that started this whole idea of the emotional set point. At the same time, law of attraction came into my life, the whole spiritual journey, life lessons, God's school, why is this happening, right? Adversity, healing, all that work too. And so to kind of jump ahead to the emotional set point and the work that I love doing is talking about this. We all have an emotional set weight, whether we like that set weight or not, right? And what that means is no matter how hard we try, we kind of navigate or bounce back to that original body frame and the weight that our body is. So when we say emotional set point, it kind of is at the same understanding, but it's an emotional one. And why are we set at this emotional set point? Because of our childhood, because of our choices, because of our intentions. And again, see how it all blends and connects together. So the emotional set point, I have a whole bunch of information on my channel. I have a whole process that I take people through to teach them how to uncover their own emotional set point. And it's all through the process of elimination and getting in touch with your feelings and understanding feelings over emotions and diving deep into all those and clearing out those negative words that might be tying you down, like anger and hatred and frustration, right? Uncovering those because you cannot heal what you're not aware of. So we really dive in and we look at that and we help people uncover just where they're set at. And remember, it changes every day because life changes every day. but to understand kind of where you gravitate to, and then that emotional set point, you actually get like a factor or a like a scale, right? You get weighed on the scale. I am going to show you one little chart that might help your audience. You've probably seen the chart before, right? So
Yeah.
you've probably seen that on something that you've done. And I use that kind of scale to help people kind of figure out where they come in. And it's not to say, oh my gosh, you're a 5 and you're less than the person I worked with yesterday. It's not for that at all. It's for them to identify what words, what emotions that they're really kind of holding on to. And I'll give you an example so it makes sense for your audience. Grief, right? I did this emotional set point process 5 years ago. At the time I had done it, in that day or that week that I was experiencing, grief was nowhere in on my chart. So I remembered looking at my numbers or, that work and going, wow, how cool is this? Like, I wasn't feeling grief in that week, which tends to be something that I obviously feel, right? Depending on the place I am at. 2 weeks ago, I did the same process, and grief was off the charts in the same process, and
Hmm.
because I'm grieving myself right now and because I haven't been feeling well, so I'm missing
Mm.
me, and so grief had shifted from my daughter to me, and so grief is an emotion. So, wouldn't it be nice if you could have a sense of where you stand emotionally for yourself, almost like getting on the scale and seeing where you're at? And I'm not somebody who weighs themselves, so I'm not talking about that kind of weight, but I am really clear on I get up every day and I know exactly how I feel and I try to navigate through that. So,
Mm.
hopefully
Wow.
that helps.
It does, and actually, could you just for those
Yeah,
of our listeners out there who are listening and weren't able to see the chart, can you just
yeah.
describe exactly what that is for those folks?
Sure. So I use the 40 feeling words from Esther and Jerry Hicks' works. Which one?
Abraham.
Yes, thank you. I'm like, "Oh my god, I see all their books behind me. I have them all, right?"
That's
So,
okay.
there's a million different feelings. So if I said to you, "Tell me how you feel today," and one of the words that you were feeling was not on this chart, this
Mm.
was just so everybody could have one kind of central place to go for words. And
Yeah.
I give each one of the words from joy to the last word, the heaviest word on the chart, which is powerlessness.
Mm.
No power, right?
Yeah.
So they all have a factor, and halfway through that scale would be boredom, and that
Mm.
has a factor of about 5. So somewhere around boredom is like a middle ground for this scale, and the idea is everybody wants to be happy. And it's funny, I was doing an interview the other day, and someone asked me straight out, "Do you think everybody wants to be happy?" And it was such a great question because the truth is, there are seem to be some people out there who might not really intend and want to be happy because they seem to always be miserable, but maybe this scale wouldn't be for them because it would make it painfully obvious where they're at. But 90% of the people that come to me are in the mindset or are striving to be the best version of themselves, and that it sits somewhere up around joy, happiness, contentment, right? Love, appreciation. So there's so many people who maybe just need a little coaching and mentoring to get them up there and a little hope, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanna go back to just follow up on the one point that you said when you were talking about first learning about this and when you were talking about, the about happiness and the types of people who were happy as opposed to those who weren't, and
Yeah.
it just brought to mind something when you talked about the people who have gone through grief or had gone through
Mhm.
challenges, and they tended to be the ones who were truly happy, and I was journaling yesterday and was something about the fact that I think that, we the only way we appreciate the lightness is when in the dark. And
Mm,
so
yeah,
I think that may be also then why people who have gone through so many challenges really why they want to be able to be happy because they've seen the other side and they don't, necessarily like it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I remembered, and I don't know if this is for you also when you're working with people, and this is gonna sound so strange, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I remembered going through this process and kind of getting in a better place, okay, from the very beginning when I started with my grief journey. And I remembered people coming through the door and kind of being in a really bad place. And there was a little piece of me that I'm going to use this word, and I know it's going to upset somebody, but I don't mean it to. It's just really to bring awareness to it. There was a piece of me that was a little jealous of where they were. No, not jealous of the event that took place that placed them there, but like your point was, they're at the beginning of something. And when you go through grief, like you and I have been through, right? There's a clearing away, there's a new beginning. When one thing ends, another has to start. And so there's something beautiful about learning how to navigate pain or how to heal yourself or finding the joy in the heartache and recognizing your love is connected to your grief and grief is connected to your love and how those two blend. And so there's that beautiful awareness to the awakening that takes place when somebody's going through hardship. And that is the dark to the light, right? So
Yeah,
totally agree with you.
wonderful. When you're working with a client, let's say someone is listening to this right now and they're feeling maybe not exactly lost, but they're feeling out of sorts, and or maybe they're starting to feel like they want to get on this. Maybe they've started a spiritual journey. What is what's sort of the maybe the first steps that you do with people to help them move on to that journey?
Yeah. I think the best and most important step is to navigate a really good partner to listen. And so I can be more service to somebody by saying nothing and just sitting with them in their grief. And even asking somebody, one of my most sacred things to do when they first come in, especially on the grief journey, is tell me about the day that your loved one died. I want to know everything. And listening to them navigate that story and that journey really helps me understand where they are in their grief. And if it's concise and they have it, excuse me, they can tell it so concisely and and now I'm here and that took place and I'm okay because of this. And if they're in that space, I kind of know where to come in at. Where if they're just starting and they're crying and they're upset, and I just know to back away, right? So the first thing that I could do with anybody who's in a place and they're trying to figure out where they are, that's my job too, is just to sit with them and navigate exactly where they are in that moment and be of service to them that way first off before I start telling them what I think they should do, which I never do, by the way. As you know, you we always say we're healers in the sense that I heal with my words, but only in guidance. I'm never telling anybody what they need to do next. I'm always making a soft um, have you thought of, or
Right.
something that worked for me was, and don't forget, I think you can totally speak to this. I used to say in my banking career, I'm only as successful as the last person I helped. And so along the way, when you get to a point where you're 20 years in helping people, it's not me. It's the last, thousands of people that have come through the door that have stories in similar situations where they go, "Oh, I learned this from you and now I'm here," where you can say, "This worked for 20 of my clients and perhaps you'd like to watch this movie and this seemed to help most of them." That's where your experience comes from. So,
Yeah, I love that. And I also so appreciate the fact that you are letting people just to be able to tell their story,
mhm,
you're inviting them and just being quiet for the most part, occasionally asking a question, but just
yeah,
let them do that because I think so often we don't feel heard, and I think
mhm,
that's one of the reasons why it's so good to be able to hire a coach, to
yeah,
invest in that or to find a mentor, to have someone because as much as our families may wanna help or, you may have good friends, but again, sometimes even good friends will just wanna fix you. And,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah. Is
have you
there
found that?
some
And as much as I sometimes I really wanted to just be fixed, can you just, just make it stop? But at the same time, I also worked with a coach who really just who would just let me talk. He
yeah,
very rarely, like, interjected, and it really helped me a lot
yeah,
because I think especially because I didn't talk that much in my family because I had other members of the family that would sort of, you know, uh, use up all the air
yeah,
in
yeah,
a way,
yeah.
so it was nice to be heard. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, I have throat issues, thyroid issues from my childhood for being the last of 7 and always feeling not heard, right? So, the whole idea of speaking your truth and, stepping into your own power, and, I always say to people, when you come in, I'm not gonna tell you something you don't know, but what I might give you is the language that you haven't had to describe it, and that's really the job of an especially of an intuitive, is to just give them the language that describes themselves to help them get more clarity for their own journey. I just love
Mm.
that.
And you actually just answered, I think, the question I was gonna ask because I'm wondering if people out there, may I'm sure probably a lot of people in my audience may know already, but what would you say is the biggest difference between and I'm actually gonna throw a curveball in here, between a business
Go for it.
coach, a life coach, and spiritual coach. I think my
Yeah.
internet is being a little wonky, but I think we got through there. So,
Yeah.
yeah, what would you say is, like, the biggest difference between well, let's say between what you do and versus a business coach or a life coach?
Yeah. To me, there's really no difference, and I know that's gonna sound strange because I've had the ability to pull all my business sense. So I feel like I remember I have to go back to my banking career. I would say to people coming in, I'm not going to be like most bankers who you're dealing with, because I have this whole beautiful intuitive side that I have no problem stepping into. And I'm not talking about let's play the lottery and the whole psychic thing, let me tell you how much money you're going to have in your account. I don't believe in any of that, by the way. So I'm talking about getting in touch with people who they really are and coaching them to the best of theirs, and using the law of attraction, manifestation, and awareness and consciousness, and positive thinking and affirmations. And so I've never to have money and to be successful and to make good revenue and balance your P&Ls, and so to me they haven't been like, oh, I'm giving you the spiritual advice now and let's switch over and do the business side. They're all connected, and I've been lucky enough to be able to work with people who are open to hear that information in one place. And I think that's been the key to my success in my banking career, certainly, was that people kind of saw me as that person and were comfortable with it. I actually took a test in my banking career where it showed up that I was very intuitive, and it showed up as a red flag for my leader, right? He was like, if you get a red flag, here's the notice. And it was, Jean makes most of her decisions based on her intuition. And that was a concern. And I thought they had no idea just how much success had come from trusting that. So to me, and again, I want to make sure I'm being clear when I'm talking about intuition, I'm not talking about prediction and the real woo woo side. I'm talking about connecting to the inner guidance system and knowing when you're on an opening and when things feel closed, and trusting your gut, and knowing when you're in the right direction versus something that feels off for you. And that's the kind of intuition that I'm speaking and I coach people to.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do as well, and I think it's so important for us to be able to tap into that, and it's a shame that your boss at the time or whoever took that as a red flag when it was really to me, it's a green flag, and it's like, what a wonderful gift to be able to do that because, it's great to look at the logical things and, you want to be able to do your due diligence, especially in the banking industry, but to
Yeah.
also be able to then trust your instincts because sometimes, and I don't know if you were dealing with loans or anything like that,
Oh,
somebody
yes.
may not, or let's say maybe they look great on paper, like they
Yeah.
would be wonderful candidate, but yet there's something about it that just seems a little off, and maybe they turn out to have actually been, not a good loan candidate at all. So
If you go back to the 5 C's or the 5 P's, depending on what school you went to, right? You know, credit, capacity, capability, payment, all that, credit. Um, 3 or 4 of those 5 C's are all about the people. So, they really have nothing to do with the numbers, right? So, when we're reading and we're looking at people and the energy of people and the, credibility and the, relationship and stuff, it's all based on personal relationships. So,
yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, when we were talking about happiness, I meant to ask you this, so I'll throw it in now.
yeah.
What uh, is there a commonly held belief about happiness, maybe that you passionately disagree with?
Hmm. In all the studies, the one that I think I connect to the most, that kind of shaped and changed my understanding of happiness. So looking at it like, oh, it's a skill and you can learn it. And, it's something, the pursuit of happiness, that it's just something you have to go out and get. And are you wired this way? Or do you wake up emotional set point, right? All the variations of this whole beautiful discussion. The one that I love the most. So before I tell you the one I don't like, because that might be a little harder for me to find, the understanding of the Buddhist teachings, which is all about no matter where you are, good, bad, or indifferent, it's fleeting and changing, the impermanence of it all. And to me, people who really grasp happiness know that I'm experiencing joy, just watch it go away because you just finished your ice cream and it's over, right? Or I'm so sad right now because this just happened to me and I lost my job and I'm in the turmoil of all that means. That also will go away. So understanding the flexibility to or the impermanence to all of it and the Buddhist teachings they really taught me, and that was later on in my life for sure. That understanding was able to take the idea of happiness to a whole new level, that I'm not on pursuant of it or I'm not trying to pursue this thing, that happiness that seems outside of me, but it's actually something that's taking place in me, and in every God gave waking moment and second, I get to determine whether I'm leaning into it or leaning out of it. And that to me is so powerful in the sense that it's not outside me, it's within me. And I get to pivot from this feeling that feels really off for me today. And I'm going to lean into this thought because it's a better feeling thought. And all that comes with practice, practice, practice. So I still go back to that. It's a skill and and it's something that can be happy. I don't think it's on social media watching and looking at the perception of how people show up. I don't think that's real. And I think people really need to be in check and understand that that's an illusion and what you're seeing is not what you're really seeing,
Yeah,
right? So,
definitely. And think that's such a good point that I really hope people take you take one thing away from this is to realize that, yeah, that happiness is in an inside job, shall we say,
yeah,
and you have the choice, and you can choose whether to be happy, you can choose whether to be sad. It's how you perceive something, and I love listening to Michael Singer. I'm sure
yeah.
you
Oh,
probably,
yeah, yeah,
and he's all about, why are you don't have to choose to suffer, you can just let it go,
yeah,
and I know that sounds, easier to say than do
yeah,
at times, and it's practice. It requires practice, like you just said, it's like
yeah.
anything else, so it's and
Everything
he
is a
said start with small
practice.
things, like the weather.
Um, Michael asked me, we decided to come to Florida, which of course meant leaving my family, which of course meant me leaving my career, leaving my network, my net worth, everything. And I remembered one of the first questions he asked was, Oh, I'm so nervous about you giving all this up because will you be happy? And I remember looking back at him and saying, it's funny, you don't own that and you don't control that and you can't provide that for me. That's something that goes with me wherever I go. And yes, I love my job and that makes me happy. I can say that. And I love my family and they make me happy and stuff. But that's not leaving. I know that after I lost my daughter, she's not gone. I'm still connected to her. So this idea that he was holding on to my happiness and was he responsible for that back to me. So if people are listening and they're wondering what's the definition of that and how to put that in place, it's wherever you go, it's whatever you decide to do. And it doesn't mean we're not going to screw up or not be happy. And we're like, I am not the poster child for happiness. I am dealing with some health issues right now. And there's a bulk of my day that is spent in suffering and trying to put my best feet on and, and move forward and stuff. So I think that makes me a little more credibility than somebody who just seems so happy 90% of the time and is preaching something that they don't know the other side to the coin. I go back and forth and I have to stay focused on what I'm wanting and intending every day, just like 90% of the people listening. So I hope they hear that when they're hearing me speak today, that it isn't something that one and done. I
Right.
I have to practice every day to these things and I need to be reminded. And sometimes I listen to my own videos and I know that sounds cliche, but they teach me things that I need to be reminded. And when you have a spiritual channel and you look and you're doing editing, and I'm hearing the same message all day from somebody like you who's been on my show and you give me a nugget and I get to edit it for 40 hours, it gets it gets wired in there. So for the people who are listening to this podcast and thinking, "Ooh, there was some good tips in there," listen to more like this, right? So
Mhm.
to keep that energy going and keep it focused. I gave this example the other day in a spiritual class I was teaching. Someone was asking me, how do I do it? And I said, my health is a great example. I get on my bike path every day and I listen to podcasts and YouTube. That's my pastime. And I said, if I'm not feeling well and I just got a diagnosis of, I'm going to throw a diagnosis out that I haven't been diagnosed with, but to make sense for your audience, let's say I get diagnosed with lupus. I could get on the bike path and I could focus on all the education around lupus, which is great information because I need to know it because I just got diagnosed. Or I could listen to how to heal your cells regarding lupus. And there's my choice. Both are important. You should know all you can know about your illness, but you should also spend equally as much time focused on the healing aspect of it. So now you get to navigate your choices. Both are important, but where are you going to spend all your time? It's back to the two wolves you feed, right? The one that is hungry. So
Yeah.
I know I talk fast and I'm sorry. I just am so passionate about everything you're talking about today.
Well, that's okay. Anyone listening or watching, you just go back and listen to this again, and that is that's so true though, because sometimes, and I've experienced this in my life, is that you need to hear things. You need to hear a message over and over again because sometimes you're distracted or you're just not in a space where you just weren't ready to hear it. And then, the 10th time, finally the light goes on and you're like, oh, that's what they meant. Oh, I get it now. And I've had that happen to me
Yeah.
dozens and dozens of time in my
Mhm.
life, either with work, business issues or with spiritual things. So there's
Hey, the law of
nothing wrong with
attraction,
listening.
when the law of attraction was handed to me, the sample CD from Esther and Jerry Hicks, I ejected that thing from my car. Somebody gave me the CD. I threw it to the back of my car and I literally said, "What a whack. Not for me." And then 2 months later, I was vacuumed up the CD, put it back in, and it changed my life, right? So, the day that I heard, that we choose this life and Sylvia Brown's work on that in the very beginning, I took the book and threw it across the room, so angry that I would have chosen the loss of my daughter and pissed that
Mm,
she suggested it, right? Picked the book back up, read the rest of the chapter, changed my life. So
right.
so good that you're saying the timing on this and it kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation too, with the emotional set point. This tool that we're discussing today can truly be a place for you just to kind of sense where you are and then do the work around it. And then you get to decide how you want to navigate through it. So,
Absolutely. Wonderful. I want to ask you one last question
sure.
before we finish up here, is that I love getting the different answers from my guests on. So what are you curious about right now?
You don't have all day for that. Right now, if I had to say, like, the work that I'm immersed in right now that I'm really curious about, it's everything we've been discussing today, in the sense that right now I'm navigating these health challenges that I'm talking about, and the idea that we get to heal ourselves. And am I stopping my own healing right now because I'm focusing on the wrong thing over the right thing, and am I the one who's creating my own scenario? I'm fascinated by that. I'm curious. I don't know the answer. I think I know the answer. I'm trying to find the right solutions to navigate through this, to resolve my own suffering right now, because I do believe that we do have that ability, and I'm still trying to figure that out. So that is the thing that I'm most curious about for myself right now, and a lot of the people that I'm supporting, I think we're all in the same situation, and we're trying to figure out, and we're all healers too. So it's interesting, little ego there, right? That we're, how can the healer be sick? But that's what I'm curious about.
Well, how can you be sick is because we're still human.
Yes.
That's how,
Yeah.
and as much as we grow, there's always still another step to take. There's another, ramp up. And
Yeah.
so that's how you get to the other side, is you've got to be able to go through things. So
Yeah.
there may be a reason why you're facing this right now that will hopefully resolve itself soon. And then you'll be able to go, okay, now I see why that happened. Good. Now I can help others. So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
True.
cool. Speaking of helping others, and you've been so wonderful in sharing all of your brilliance with our audience today, and I mentioned in your intro and that you have a YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and so tell the audience a little bit about that and
Sure.
where people can find you and learn more about you.
Yeah. So please, check out my YouTube. My YouTube, like yours, is geared towards being a spiritual hub for people on all things spiritual. So I really, the reason for my YouTube channel, when I started my journey, I was going to all these different websites and learning about this and learning about that and learning about this. And I had all these different people I were following. I follow all of them. They're great, right? I wanted to give my audience one place to go to learn a whole bunch of different things. And I also want, because I love networking and helping other people market their modalities. And I wanted to be a platform for people to be highlighted from around the world. So that's why you were on my show. You're the perfect audience for me because you do this work and you want to support other people. So I love helping people through that venue, and I keep it all organized in different playlists and stuff. So for anybody who is listening, who is a spiritual person who would like to be on my show, just reach out to me through my channel, which is Jeannie Lynch at The Intuitive Mindset.
All right, very good. And I'll have that information in the show notes as well. So if you're listening somewhere and you don't have a pen handy, don't worry. Go to liveloveengagepodcast.com. You'll be able to find Jeannie's episode as well as all of our past episodes. So is there anything that I didn't ask you about that I should have, or any last little nugget of wisdom you want to share with our audience today?
I feel so complete. I really do. I really enjoyed our show that we did, and I enjoyed editing you, and I loved your book. So I really felt connected when I read your book too for the audience. Um, it's just I so connected to your story, and I think your story is kind of what we've talked about on this show today, which is your life is not unsticky. It could be really sticky, but it's also what life is all about and experiencing it, and then turning around and turning that into a gift, which is what you've done, just makes it all tolerable and and just part of the journey. So I appreciate that.
I love it. Oh, well, thank you again for being here, for having me on your show. I so appreciate
Yeah.
that. And I know our audience received a lot of benefit from you today. So
Thank you,
thank
Gloria.
you. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
And I
everybody.
want to thank all of you for listening and for watching. And you are the light of my life. You're why I do this, and I so appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed yet, of course, please make sure that you do subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube at Gloria Grace Rand. And until next time, as always, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.